What if I told you some narcissists do change? Not overnight, not easily, but deep beneath the mask, behind the ego and past the walls, they crack. Maybe you've dealt with one. Maybe you've seen it in yourself. Narcissism isn't just arrogance, it's armor. Built over years, forged in pain, designed to protect a very fragile sense of self. But what happens when that armor stops working? Can a narcissist actually wake up and become self-aware? That question hits hard, doesn't it? Because it challenges everything we believe about change, identity, and the people we write off as toxic. In this video, we're going deep. We'll uncover what narcissism really is, the surprising moments that trigger transformation, and the emotional journey that shifts someone from self-obsessed to self-aware. This isn't just psychology, this is human. So if you've ever been hurt by a narcissist, feared becoming one, or simply want to understand the most hidden kind of growth, stay with me, because what I'm going to tell you might change how you see other people or yourself. We throw around the word narcissist like it means selfish or full of themselves, but it's actually way deeper and darker. Narcissism isn't confidence, it's a cover-up. Underneath the surface, narcissism is a defense mechanism born from emotional injury. In childhood, some people experience a kind of emotional neglect or conditional love that teaches them, you're only valuable if you're perfect. Or worse, you don't matter at all. So they build a false self, one that looks strong, charming, even superior. It gets attention, approval, and admiration, but it's hollow. And it has to be constantly maintained. That's why narcissists crave validation. They don't just want praise, they need it to survive emotionally. It's their oxygen. And they're not even aware of it. Most narcissists truly believe they're fine. They don't see the mask. They think it's their real face. That's what makes it so hard to treat, to talk to, or to reach them emotionally. They fear vulnerability because vulnerability is what hurt them in the first place. So when you question them, criticize them, or even just get too close, the walls go up fast. Anger, blame, denial, it's all part of the protection plan. And while they may come off as invincible or untouchable, deep down there's often a terrified inner child calling the shots, just begging not to be abandoned again. It's important to understand, this isn't about excusing toxic behavior, it's about decoding it. Because without clarity, there's no path forward, for them or for you. Once you realize narcissism is actually a survival strategy built on shame, you begin to see the transformation isn't just possible, it's necessary. And it all starts when that perfect-looking mask begins to fall apart. So what actually breaks the illusion? For many narcissists, it's not therapy or reading a book or some quiet moment of reflection. It's pain. Raw, undeniable pain. It might be a massive betrayal, someone they trusted turning away. It could be failure, losing a job, being exposed, or falling from grace. Or it could be isolation, when no one buys the act anymore and they're left alone with the silence. These moments hit differently, not just emotionally, but existentially. For the first time, the narcissist feels something unfamiliar. The mask isn't working. They try to double down, more charm, more control, more manipulation. But it doesn't land like it used to. People start seeing through it. And that's terrifying, because if the false self fails, what's left? This is where cognitive dissonance begins to creep in. Their internal narrative, I'm special, I'm right, I'm in control, starts to clash with reality. And that clash, it stings hard. They might feel anger, confusion, panic, but underneath it all, a different emotion begins to emerge. Discomfort. Emotional discomfort that they can't ignore or explain away. That's the first crack in the mirror, the moment when their reflection no longer matches their identity. Some try to distract themselves, others lash out, but for a rare few, that discomfort lingers. It gnaws at them, keeps them up at night, forces them to replay moments they'd rather forget. And here's the paradox: that pain, that collapse, that moment of clarity, it's the very beginning of change. But just because a crack appears doesn't mean the mirror shatters. Some will do anything to glue it back together. Others, they'll lean in and ask the question most never dare to ask. What if I'm the problem? That question is the beginning of everything. This is the part most people never see. When a narcissist's world starts to unravel, it doesn't happen with grace or clarity. It crashes, and it's messy. Their identity, so carefully crafted, starts to slip through their fingers. They can't charm their way out of it. They can't manipulate the outcome. Suddenly, they're staring at a version of themselves they've spent years avoiding. It starts with confusion. The usual tactics stop working. People don't respond the way they used to. Control slips. Rejection stings harder. The grandiosity feels hollow. And under all of it, a creeping sense of shame. That shame is toxic because narcissists were built to avoid it at all costs. So when it surfaces, it hits like a tidal wave, and then comes the emotional collapse. They may fall into depression, not the kind that makes them cry quietly, but the kind that makes them furious at the world. Life feels unfair. People feel cruel. Victimhood becomes their new narrative because it still keeps them from taking responsibility. But at some point, the silence gets louder. There's no one left to blame, no one left to impress. And in that silence, something terrifying happens. They meet themselves. And what they see, it's not pretty. They begin to question everything, past relationships, motivations, memories. The ego fights back hard, twisting facts, rewriting history, doing anything to avoid accountability. But if they don't numb it or run from it, if they sit in it, they'll feel something they haven't felt in years: grief. Not just grief for what they've lost, but grief for who they never became, for the connections they destroyed, for the love they never truly felt, for the person behind the mask. And in that grief, something else stirs, a sliver of humility, a crack in the arrogance, the tiniest drop of empathy, not for others yet, but for their own younger, wounded self. And sometimes they begin to notice how much pain they've caused, not as a monster, but as someone who was deeply afraid. This is the bottom, the raw place no one ever wants to reach. But it's also the first moment real self-awareness can grow, because transformation never starts with pride. It starts with pain. Self-awareness doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It shows up in fragments, uncomfortable truths whispered in quiet moments. And often, the narcissist's first reaction isn't acceptance, it's denial. They start to see flashes of the damage they've done. A memory replays differently. A past conversation sounds colder. An ex's tears feel more real. And for a split second, they realize, I did that. But then the shame kicks in. And shame is unbearable. To survive it, they deny it. They'll blame others, rewrite history, minimize the harm. Anything to avoid facing the truth, that they weren't just misunderstood, they were hurtful. Some lash out, accusing others of being the problem. Some spiral into perfectionism, trying to earn their worth back. Others retreat, fearing they're irredeemable. And yet, something has changed. They can't unsee what they've seen. The mirror they spent years avoiding now follows them everywhere. It's in their relationships, their regrets, their reflection. Sometimes it takes therapy. Sometimes it's a breakdown. Sometimes it's a moment of raw vulnerability that pierces through the ego, just long enough to let something new in. And that something, it's not guilt. It's not self-hatred. It's honesty. It's the moment they stop fighting the truth and start sitting with it. No excuses, no image to protect, just reality. But this stage is fragile. Many fall back into denial. It's safer there, familiar, comfortable in its pain. Still, for those who stay in the discomfort, something begins to shift. They feel empathy, not just for others, but for the version of themselves who was so lost, so scared, so desperate for love that they built an entire false identity to survive. And from that empathy grows a tiny but powerful thought. I don't want to be like this anymore. That sentence is the turning point. Not because it fixes anything instantly, but because it opens the door to real accountability. And maybe for the first time ever, they begin to ask, not how to be admired, not how to win, but how to truly connect, how to feel. And when they choose to walk through that door, stumbling, scared, unsure, they step into a new chapter, not as a narcissist in recovery, but as a human finally waking up. Awareness is only the beginning. What follows is the real work, and it's the hardest part of all, because now they have to live without the mask. It starts small, a pause before speaking, a moment of reflection after an argument, the ability to say, that was my fault, without spiraling into shame. They begin to feel real empathy, Not performative, not strategic, but felt, deep in the gut. They wince at memories they once dismissed. They revisit old relationships with something new, remorse. And from remorse comes responsibility. They start taking accountability, not just in words, but in actions. Apologizing without expecting forgiveness, listening without defending, letting go of control without feeling like they're disappearing. They begin to repair, even if slowly. Conversations feel less like power plays and more like connection. They begin to value truth over image, and slowly, they change. It's not linear. It's not perfect. Sometimes they slip. Sometimes the old self whispers back. But there's a difference now. They notice. They see themselves. And because of that, they can choose differently. This stage isn't glamorous. It's slow, quiet, internal. But it's where real transformation takes root, because rebuilding with self-awareness isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. So, can a narcissist truly change? The answer is yes, but not through pressure or punishment. Through pain, reflection, and the slow process of waking up. We've seen how narcissism forms as a survival strategy, how cracks in the illusion lead to collapse, how denial fights back but awareness pushes forward, and how, with empathy and accountability, even the most guarded hearts can begin to open. This transformation isn't common, but it's possible, and that possibility matters, because it reminds us that people are not fixed, that even those who've caused harm aren't always hopeless, that growth, even when it starts in darkness, can lead to something incredibly real. If you've been hurt by a narcissist, this story might feel like justice. If you've seen narcissistic traits in yourself, maybe it feels like hope. Either way, healing is messy, growth is hard, but change, real, deep human change, is always worth believing in. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because someone out there needs to hear this just as much as you did. Thanks for watching, and if there's a specific topic you want me to cover in the next video, let me know. I'd love to hear your ideas.